And so for me to go from 10 listings a month to 12, that friend that I helped that got 2 listings this month, screw that guy.
This is 10 steps to become a world-class prospector.
Yeah, so number one, it was just being willing to be coachable, right? So, like you guys have agents in your company who are probably going to listen to this recording. Whoever you choose to follow, you just have to follow them and actually do what they say. So I committed to just being coachable. So one of the things that I did for the first year or two was I was like, you know what? I have the best coach. I'm good. I made it. So for the first year or two, guess what my business did? Went backwards. So I even had doubts. I was like, Steve, should I go back to my old coach? And, he helped me overcome that. He said, it's like Tiger Woods changing a swing. And that's what he said. But in my opinion, it was just me being not coachable, being complacent, thinking, all right, I've got a Ferrari now. I don't have to drive fast.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, that makes sense.
So it was like, oh, I have a really, which is point number 2, was committing my life to the business and being all in. Part of being not coachable is not committing your life to the business and being all in. Being partially in. When you have a coach and you kind of do what they say, that's not being all in. And so the people that I noticed that are the best producers in the world, front row people, they're there with their wives, their kids are there. Like their religion is whatever they sign up for. So number 4 was being willing to implement massive action. So I know Mike talked about, this a lot about at the retreat was quality quantity.
Yep.
Usually we think, it's either heavy quality or, massive quantity or really good quality. What I learned working with Mike was really refining what I was doing, and really putting in the quality of the contacts. So like you just said, NLP, digging deeper into their motivation and desires, really linking it back to the emotion. I started adding more of that into my phone presentation.
Would you say the number of contacts you're making each day has actually gone down because now you're digging deeper or into the, more criteria questions?
Couple things. So number 1, it's gone down because each conversation is more quality. Number 2, I probably got better because I'm working now more of my database. But also number 3, once you get better because of massive action, when you go to 100 contacts a day, eventually, if you need one appointment from 100, eventually it'll be 80 to get one, then 60 to get one, then 40 to get one. Really, it's all about the appointment every day.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned from Steve Powers. But what Mike had me do is don't worry about the appointment, more so worry about the quality of the appointment. So even if you didn't get an appointment today, at least you worked the perfect schedule, but then you also hit your database. So when the database is ready, they'll call you.
Right.
So actually, it's funny. The biggest thing I got from Mike, other than quality, of course, was how to work my database better. And most people think Mike Ferry's system is all about cold calling. I hope the Orlando people think that because I don't love my competition, but it's ultimately about the database. That's our system.
Be a little bit more specific. What did Mike teach you about working the database, and how has that improved?
Yeah, so it's what he taught us all, and this is just sitting on my desk every day. The transcription for the Mike Ferry sales system.
Yep.
One of the things he says in here is to get to 1,000 people as fast as possible. And so a lot of us are trying to, get the CRM, this magical pill, this open, this client party. But the basic 2 things that he tells us to do is call everyone once a quarter and mail them once a quarter.
Yeah.
So, I was trying to figure out, he asked me, how big is your database? I said, well, Mike, I have these people in my iPhone. I got these in my CRM. I got these in the Mojo. He goes, you don't even know what pos to piston because it's like the P in the cup. You're moving the P. You don't know where's coming from what. So what we did is we just merged it all into one place and then called them once a quarter. And literally voicemails to your database, personal voicemails to your database once a quarter. This is my 11th year in business. This year was the first quarter I ever called my entire database in an entire quarter. And what's so interesting is in the first quarter, I got 10 listings from my database.
Wow.
Which was awesome.
That's great.
But in the second quarter, I got like 14 from the database.
So you're seeing the improvement.
So it's increasing, yeah. Yeah, so The database business is the biggest opportunity for us as prospectors. Because if you really look at the definition of prospecting, prospecting is just not waiting, and you have this big database. Just don't wait for the database to call you. You call the database. We came up with there's 3 rules to the database, and this is something I just came up with randomly one day. I was making 100 contacts. You have a lot of time to think about random things, and so there's 3 rules to the database I found. Number one, uh, they'll never take the call because they're not ready. So most of the prospecting to the database is just voicemails. Number two,
which is
when
okay.
they take the, which is okay, by the way. It says it in point 17 in chapter 3. Right?
But let me just touch upon that really quick because I think there's a lot of value here. What does that voicemail sound like? Are you giving some value in the voicemail? What are you using these days?
Literally, for the longest time, I was like, "Hey, John, I'm thinking about you. Hope you're good. Talk to you later." Milton James Remax, Orlando. So I want you to hear my name. I want you to hear my city, and I want you to hear my voice say your name and express to you that I'm thinking about you. So one of the things I learned from Tony Smith recently is we have to start adding a little bit more value. So I'm trying to, put a little bit of market stuff in there, trying to connect people. Hey, John, I don't know if you have a life trust person, someone to help you with your will, but I got a great guy. I just did a deal with him, and he's here to help you out if you ever need it as part of my free service. So, trying different things, but ultimately, when it comes to that, I'm very bottom line. I just want you to hear my voice say your name. So number one, they're never going to take your call because they're not ready. Number two, when they take your call, again, cause and effect, right? So when they take your call, it means they have a referral for you. So we get to be aggressive. So John, who do you know looking to buy or sell a home in the next 7 to 10 days? And the reason that question is so aggressive is designed to get a no, so that we get the reflex no out the way.
Yep.
Okay, and then number 3, when they're ready, they'll call you. So those are the 3 things that I learned from working the database from Mike. Number 5 was be willing to fail at a high level. Right, so this is year 11. Until last year, no one really heard about me. No one knew who I was. When I was with Steve, everyone in his schedule knew me. But ultimately, I was really bad for a really long time. And I think Lee Marcus said it on stage once. Most people aren't great because they're not willing to be bad. I had that quote on my wall for years, and I had lunch with him at the recent retreat. And I got to say that to him, and I'm sure he was like, okay, whatever. But that was huge for me to say it to him because that quote really inspired me for a long time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Number 6, and these points are from the blueprint that Mike did at his retreat a couple years ago. So when COVID hit, all my deals fell through, so I panicked. And one of my friends and mentors said, Milton, you ever been to a prospecting clinic? I said, yeah. He goes, well, how many appointments did you set? I said, well, I set 10 a day. He was like, perfect. What if during COVID you treated every day like a prospecting clinic, and from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. you just made 100 contacts a day? He's like, Milton, one of 2 things will happen. Number one, if COVID gets worse, you'll have a big pipeline for the future. Or number 2, if it gets better, you'll have a bunch of business. I was like, okay, I'm coachable, so let's do it.
There's people out there that are probably saying, well, who the hell are you calling if they're calling 100 people a day? There's not enough expireds. There's not enough for sale by owners. My database is small. I mean, how are you finding 100 different people to call?
A former Mike Ferry coach told me once, he goes, Milton, why do you treat the expireds and the for sale by owner different? It's the same guy. It's a human being. They may or may not have a house. So ultimately, what I got from that was it doesn't matter what kind of person it is, just a person. So, ultimately, I just split it up into 5 groups. So my goal every day was choose 5 different groups to speak to 20 people per group. So I made it a goal to speak to 20 expireds. And I went new to old. I used Vulcan 7, Mojo. 20 for sale by owners. Went new to old. 20 follow-up. I counted follow-up. 20 database. Those are easy because they're voicemails. And then 20 just listed, just sold. For the most part, I lied to myself about it. And I lied to others. I said I do 100 contacts a day. The truth is, most days I probably came up to like 75, 85, maybe 90, maybe 1 or 2 days during the week, 100, 102. But for the most part, it was at or above, like you're on or before type of thing. I'm trying to touch rim every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was only 40, sometimes it was 60. But be willing to work up to 100 contacts that day if you don't have any appointments.
Yeah.
Because really, if you look at the schedule of a quote unquote professional realtor, we got nothing else to do all day.
Right.
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, emails. Other than that unproductive stuff, we got to call people. And so I was willing to work up to 100 contacts. Like if I didn't have any appointments that day, and I did 100, that was my win for the day.
Yeah.
Now, again, Mike coached me out of that. He said, don't do that anymore. So it was all about appointments. So we switched a little bit.
Sick,
So
man.
number 7 was be willing to go through chaos of having a lot of business. I'm also analytical, like when I get very uncomfortable. And so with analyticals, like my uncomfortable self, is things have to be perfect. Like my desk has to be in order. Everything has to be right. But my coach, Steve Powers, at the time when he was with Mike, he said, Milton, on your way to the top, things will get really messy. He had me read a book called U Square. And, he said, be willing to go through chaos. And while you're driving that ship really fast, be okay with the fender falling off. And so, that's number 7 point that I had written down was be willing to allow the chaos. So for a while, I didn't have an assistant. Now I only have one, and we're going through chaos. Like we're all in the corner shaking because it's just too much for us to handle with just one assistant and one buyer's agent now. Mike always said that there's stress with low productivity and high productivity. So, I chose the stress of high productivity. Yeah, so number 8 was accept the fact that as I grow my business, I'll attract more haters, lose some friends, and develop a reputation as a shark. And it said, I'm okay with that.
How many haters? How many friends have you lost? And let's keep track. You don't have to listen to names, but
I think a lot. I mean, one of the things I learned this year was I'm averaging 12 listings a month. So before I was averaging 6 listings a month, then 8, then 10. And so for me to go from 10 listings a month to 12, that friend that I helped that got 2 listings this month, screw that guy. Like he took 2 listings out of my family's pockets. Really, I average 10K a pop on listing deals. But if I train one of my competitors locally, I'm giving them, and he gets 2 listings a month, I'm handing him $20,000 from my pocket to his. So instead of making, 100K a month, I'm only making 80 and he's making 20, which is fine, but it's not. So now I'm willing to sacrifice that relationship for that extra income, which, that's a $250,000 friendship every year. I had to make the decision, and it's a tough decision because I love people and I love friends. And shoot, I would have happy hours where I would invite other realtors to my happy hour just to chill.
yeah.
So I stopped chilling because I want to be rich, right? So that's what I mean, just cutting off all ties to local realtors. Number 9 was, again, developing the right habits. So, I said my biggest challenge has always been looking at what's next. So I'm, naturally expressive. So the biggest thing I learned from Mike wasn't about what's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years, next year, even next month. It's what could I do this week? So what I learned was if, 1 listing equals 1 sale. And then the final, I thought was a great point, even though I wrote it myself. And all the things we write is, purely from the stuff we learned from Mike, right?
This happens to be my best point.
I love when I do this. To dominate real estate, what we learned from Mike Ferry is that it's simple, it's just not easy. And when you say simple, there's only a few different things you got to do. PLAN, work the plan every day. Prospect, lead follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate contracts. That's so simple, but it's not easy. Like I had a guy tell me, oh, yeah, you should do this TikTok. You could be the king of Orlando on TikTok. I'm like, oh, okay. And I just put my headset on, like just ignore him. Because, it's simply taking a lot of listings, building a big database through massive prospecting for 5-star customer service. And then, by doing all that, you'll have a big life. And it's simply by practicing blind faith based on what we learned from Mike.